get started then. Well, good morning still, everyone. I'm Jeff Smith with UNC-TV. I'm Military Veterans Affairs Director for UNC-TV. Sorry about that. I'm used to a microphone being clipped to me. I'm not used to handheld anymore. So yes, I'm the Director of Military Veterans Affairs at UNC-TV, which basically means I handle all the productions and everything from that end. So we're part of the university system. So NC State is one of our sister campuses as well, which is great. But today you're not here to listen to me, which is important. You're here to listen to this great group of panelists of student veterans. I'll be moderating today, so let me introduce everyone. They're not the order I had originally from my notes, but that's okay. I'll start. Well, we've all met our key speaker here today, Jared. You're going to be talking from the national level as well as your transitions as well, so appreciate you being here as part of this. Richelle is with UNC Asheville as a Marine veteran. Richelle is currently serving as the intake coordinator for ABCCM Veteran Services of the Carolinas, as well as the inbound marketing manager for NC Serves Western. Ms. Jara assists with homeless veteran population and their families in finding suitable housing and employment within 28 counties in North Carolina. And your degree you're seeking and almost have is in psychology. So thank you so much for being here. And then next to her, there's actually her fiance, and new to the stage.
He shaved.
Just found out a few minutes ago he's being added to the panel here. Kevin Shepard is a Marine veteran as well, Staff Sergeant. Focused in small arms repair while in service, and is just starting out on his path for education at AB Tech in Asheville as well, going after a mechanical engineering degree. He's only been out of the Corps for 7 months, had to do it 8 years in. Thank you so much for your service, sir.
Thank you.
Next up, I'll just do it in order here. Specialist Jara Fontaine is at Methodist University down in Fayetteville. She was an Army specialist where she was a signal operator with radio transmissions. She's now studying computer information technology and also is the current president of the SVA at Methodist. And she is a mother of 2 and married to an active duty soldier as well at Fort Bragg. Excellent. Back over to the other page. Corporal Brett Wilson, Wake Tech Community College, Marine veteran as well, where he was in infantry and security forces. He is the Student Veteran of America president at Wake Tech, and he's heading to UNC Asheville, so keeping him in the university system as well. So kind of keep you involved. Your degree program, Associate Engineering and Associate of Science, and at UNC Charlotte, you'll be going into motorsports engineering as well. And of course, NASCAR being down that region, that's a great opportunity, and all the other parts that go along with it, even if you don't go the racing way. Finally, we have Will Beam, U.S. Army veteran from Western North Carolina. He is an NC State man, so a little home turf here. He's working on his Master's of Science in Parks, Recreation, and Tourism Management here at NC State. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here on the panel and explaining a few things what student veterans are doing. The first thing that everyone wants to know is transitions, is what this is about. Let's start off on the, if you don't mind coming down the line, we'll start at the far end if you will. Yeah, I'm sorry, there's a couple of mics stand off. First of all, the transition going, you had a little different transition. You went into college first, then went to the service, and then now going back. Talk about those different transitions and what the difference has been between when you came out of high school fresh and then coming out of the military.
Yeah, so it was 2011 when I was 18. I came here originally, and like we talked about yesterday, the key difference between then and now, so I came back after one contract with the Army, was the focus on what I wanted to do, and then also the discipline and determination to do it. So when I came back, I'm using the post-9/11 job bill, treating it as a job, whereas before it was what you do after high school, right? That's what you're kind of guided into if you get into a school. So when I came back, it was really on just the discipline to treat it like a job every day, going to class, sit in the front row, things like that. As far as the transition, my transition was pretty good. It was good. The hiccups were mainly weird things with the GI Bill, where if you're still active duty, I was on terminal leave when I started, so I still had 2 months I didn't get the GI Bill housing allowance because I was on active duty. Even if 1 day per month. So that was a little bit of a hiccup that then we talk about in the out processing program. So that was the main issue, but pretty good transition coming to state.
Same question to you, obviously not the school part first, but the transition out.
Yeah, so the transition period, like the military, it's different for everyone. There's always difficulties that you may not expect. For me, it was pretty smooth overall. Something I would suggest if you are transitioning out, start planning even a year ahead. I saw it all the time. People are getting out and they didn't save any money. They bought new vehicles prior to getting out. It's something that the military just does. We like having flashy stuff. You see it on bases all the time, Mustangs, Camaros. I know everyone knows that. So try to hold off on the Camaros and Mustangs, save for the last year, minimize your bills, and be ready because you'll never know what happens. For me, it was a really smooth process overall, and something I noticed because I went back home to Missouri. Each state is definitely different with how they treat their military and what's provided by, provided by the state and the military. As far as like the SBA, so I went to a community college in Missouri and there was no SBA. I had no idea about the SBA. There was no veteran office, there was nothing. So pretty isolated, and I think Jared's spoken about that. It's definitely a different area coming out, from having someone around you all the time, whether, they're, bugging you or they're your best friend, there's always still someone around you. And then you get out, you're somewhat isolated. And I definitely felt that on my first year out coming to community college, because definitely in community college, you're even more isolated than what a university is. Most people on community college, as soon as they're done with classes, they want to go home. But overall, it was extremely smooth. Luckily, I saved. I didn't buy any fancy cars like I wanted to. Trust me, I wanted to. Mustangs look pretty good. But yeah, it was pretty smooth, so I'll go ahead and pass it on.
Jara?
When I initially got out of the service, I just got married, and I thought it was a good idea to go ahead and start a family, because I noticed a bunch of my female battle buddies would have their family started in the military, they turn around and deploy, and miss that first crucial year of life with their children, and I decided that it's not going to be something that I want to go through and miss. So I got out, and then I kind of forgot about yesterday, I had 2 little small jobs before I actually gave birth to my first child. While moving, because I followed my husband, who's still active duty, nobody wants to employ pregnant women. So it was very, very hard to find employment, which is a very great reason why that you want to have employment in the first place. But the thing I went to first is Barton Community College in Kansas, Fort Riley, Kansas, and I had no idea what I was doing at all. They never explained that I was entitled to, the post 9/11, but I came in the Montgomery GI Bill. I knew when I wanted to leave Florida, I just checked. Yep, all right, let's go. I don't care what I sign, let me go as fast and expeditiously as possible. So over the time of my first enlistment, I just didn't really think about it. So when I was trying to find financing and pay for this, I had no earthly idea who to turn to. ACAP really didn't explain that thoroughly, so I was kind of lost until they did the first push for the post 9/11 changeover for Montgomery GI Bill, and then everyone's like, yes, we'll take it, and that kind of helped get me started for school.
So my transition has been relatively fresh, and initially it was kind of a gut check. So I got out, took a month off to get settled, become familiar back with the area. I've been gone for 8 years, as mentioned. Found employment, and then slowly decided I wanted to make the transition to go obtain a degree. That process wasn't as clear to me as I would have liked for it to have been, and thankfully I had Richelle by my side, who had been out. She's a huge pillar that has helped me out along the way. I see her doing great things in the community and in those around us, and so I was going to her with every kind of question imaginable. Also attending community college, just as mentioned before, a lot of people, once they finish with those classes, they're done. They have their lives, their jobs, their families to return to. And I do notice that a lot at AV Tech as well. They have a pretty good veterans resources there. They have one staff member that helped tremendously with that as well. So far, I have to say overall, it's been relatively smooth after I got over the gut check itself. Okay, you're out. Now what do you do?
My transition was fairly good. I started my college while I was still active duty, so I kind of got into the role of being a student before I went out. And then the only problem that I found I faced was that when I was moving around so much, I kept having to transfer from school to school. And so I found it difficult, investing so many hours in these classes and then finding out that half of them or none of them transferred over. And so that was really difficult for me. But I was also blessed to, as I was getting out, I met with a vocational rehabilitation counselor and got set up on the VRE program. And that has been a tremendous help, even through all the moves and everything. I've had my vocational rehabilitation counselor with me, kind of walking me through everything, and so that was a lot of help for me.
I'm gonna, before I go to Jared, I want to actually follow up on that. One of the things that I think university level needs to understand is that you moved around not because you couldn't make up your mind what you wanted to do. It was your service. You had to go somewhere else. You didn't have that choice. And so when you come to a school like NC State or any other university, they're doing great work here, but it's sometimes hard for their professors and the enrollment people to understand exactly that point of, okay, I had to move around, all this work I've been doing doesn't transfer in. You almost feel like you wasted your time, don't you think?
Yes, yeah, I just moved from Oregon in November, so I was actually one semester away from getting my degree there, and then we decided to move back here, and I got put back 3 semesters now, so another year of school, because the West Coast to East Coast differential in the terms and semesters, hardly any of my credits transferred over, so I got a lot of catching up to do.
And Jared, you had a great transition. Submariner, nothing like being isolated in a submarine and going to school later.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing. So I further joke to all of the Marines in the room that the best Marine is a submarine. We got a lot of Marines out, just I'm teasing, of course. But no, my transition was pretty smooth as well. Honestly, I attribute that to mentors. I feel really fortunate and lucky to have had some good mentors along the line. So I separated from active duty in 2005, mainly because I wanted to come back in. So just a personal anecdote, I had applied for the Blue to Gold program in the Navy. I had applied to go from enlisted to become an officer, and I didn't get picked up for it. And my command staff sat with me and they're like, Lyon, listen, still a good fit, SAT scores are what got you. I'm not very smart, so my SAT scores weren't great. And so they were gonna help me restudy for my SAT. I was coming up on my re-enlistment and I had a decision to make. It took almost 2 years to fully apply for that program to ultimately be told no, and I'm thinking, okay, well if I gotta re-enlist for another 4 years, and then 2 years on, I find out no again, like that seems like a long process. So I just did the math. It was faster to get out, finish school, and then maybe come back in through OCS. So that's what I was going to do. Having gone through dive school, I was first exposed to the EOD mission, and for me, I wanted to be an EOD officer in the Navy. All that to say, though, I got out. I got hired as a defense contractor at Northrop Grumman, and job was key number 1 for me. I knew I was going to go to school because I wanted to commission, come back in, had to get my degree. But it's hierarchy of needs. I knew I needed to be able to pay the bills, so I needed to find a job. Luckily, my resume probably got searched through one of these databases, and there was this crusty old Navy chief, this was my first mentor, who saw that my resume said that I was a submariner, I was a diver. He's like, listen, he didn't have the skill set that we need, but he can do anything. That's what that means. And so I also had a security clearance. And so they hired me to do that job at Northrop Grumman because of the security clearance. It was a good job, it paid the bills. And the first couple of weeks that I was working there, Brian sat me down and goes, okay, Lyon, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I was like, well, I eventually want to go back in, commission. He goes, you in school? And I was like, well, no, Chief, I'm not. He goes, all right, I don't care what you're doing after lunch tomorrow. Tonight, go home, gather all your paperwork that you think you're going to need. There's a community college down the street. You're going to go get enrolled in classes, and you're not coming back until you are. So Brian gave me that kind of kick in the pants that I needed, and I appreciated it. So I did. I enrolled at community college. I went to school at night while working full and part-time, and I I think that isolation note is big for transitioning service members. The transition is actually getting better. We're focused on it as a government, as a private sector, and local communities, and that's important. But we think about the transition and sort of just tangential type things, and not necessarily a community being able to find that new identity, find that new tribe when we separate from active duty. I mean, I got lucky to have that smooth transition because I had, folks that I had served with in the military, and when I got out, they were just moving into the house that I had. So, my buddy got out of the Navy, moved back in, my other buddy got out of the Navy, right back from Afghanistan, moved in, and we were each other's support structure, which I think was really good. So finding your tribe, whatever it is important. There was no SVA when I got out in 2005, so I didn't have an SVA chapter at community college. But then, ultimately graduated community college, went through a variety of different things, from starting and failing a business to working at Major League Baseball for a while for the Washington Nationals. I was the manager of Florida operations before ultimately transitioning to Florida State University, school I'd always wanted to go to. To be frank, when I was going through dive school at Naval Dive and Salvage Training Center, Panama City Beach, Florida, Florida State was just a couple hour drive. And so I had some friends from high school that had gone to Florida State, so I'd go meet up with them. They were probably college sophomores when I was in the Navy. And I was like, Florida State is amazing, y'all. Like, I want to go there. Somebody neglected to note that I'd have to go to classes when I got to Florida State. And so, but ultimately I wound up getting linked up with my Student Veterans of America chapter at Florida State, eventually became my chapter president, and really helped to work with the university administration to create a new on-campus Veterans Center, and really try to make sure that veterans were included in every aspect of campus life and policy. So, Greek life, Student Government Association, other student organizations, just making sure that it was normal to be a veteran. It wasn't different to be a veteran, but that veterans were part of the fabric that made up the strength of our university. So focusing on inclusion was really important. And then I went on to Syracuse University, where I did graduate school and managed something called the Entrepreneurship Boot Camp for Veterans. 7 universities across the country offering no-cost entrepreneurship for veterans. And then ultimately, 5 years ago, I joined SVA's headquarters staff, originally as a development guy, and in 2016 became our national president and CEO. So that was me in a nutshell.
I think we need to borrow your coffee, whatever you're doing. That's impressive.
I can drink it all day, baby.
Kevin, I want to go back to you real quick. He's got a mic, so it'll work out perfect. One of the things you and I talked about beforehand is some of the panels here started school and taking classes while you were still in service. You did not do that. You mentioned that was an issue you wish, looking back, you would have done differently.
Yes, so the small staff that I was with just prior to me getting out, it was a 10-man staff, and a lot of them were going to college while on active duty. And at the time I was thinking, this isn't necessarily for me. I didn't feel that I was in the right place in my life to attend, because I felt that I was always busy at work. Looking back on it, I wish that I would have forced myself in that direction to do it regardless, whether it would have been 1 class at a time or 2 or 3. Because now, Richelle and I, we find ourselves working as much as we can to pay the bills, just as mentioned, and then also trying to progress ourselves forward, with education. So balancing, that would give me a little bit of an edge ahead. I wouldn't be worried as much about trying to find time to fit in all of my classes and work and take care of the kids and make sure that we're spending time together as a family as well. So it would just help out a little bit more, kind of free me up in the long run.
Now, for those of you who did take some classes while in service, I know you did, what was that like, being able to balance the two, the service and the classes? And did you find the educational side was also understanding that you were actively serving in our country as well at the same time?
Yeah, so I was stationed at Cherry Point, North Carolina, and they actually have an education building on the base, and so they had professors come onto the base and had the classes right there at the education center. So it was really easy, and a lot of the aspects were online as well, and they understood there's training, you got a busy schedule, so it was really understanding, and they were really flexible, so it was a lot of support. It was good.
So I would like to speak to while taking classes while in the military. So I did have some college experience. I went for 3 semesters before the service in the Army, and even being in the higher ed area before, when I wanted to take some classes, I was going to do an associate's in criminal justice, and I went to our education office and got set up. And so what I want to talk about is the accreditation kind of issue, and what the education office didn't really mention accreditation at all. I kind of knew what it was, and I looked up the university I was going to, and it was nationally accredited, But then I found out that NC State, as most of you know, is regionally accredited. But I was like, national, I was like, that sounds good enough, right? And this is from who's been in school before. So a lot of people in the Army that haven't been to school before, they're definitely not going to know unless someone tells them. So I took 3 classes, I think, and it would have been like 1 or 2 classes to finish it from this school. But ultimately, it was a waste of time because it does not transfer. It's not originally accredited if you go to one of these state institutions. And there was no guidance from the on-post. It was in Fort Bliss education office there. And it was just like, yeah, just pick, what school, which office you want to go to. So that was a pretty big issue. I think that happens all the time. I would talk to other people and be like, yeah, I'm like this many classes away from my associates. I was like, that's good. Like after I figured this out, right? I was like, that's good when you get out. If you do get out, it's, unfortunately not going to help you that much.
And you were stuck in the desert the whole time too.
Yeah. I like the Blue Ridge Mountains.
One of the other parts, okay, you transitioned out of the military. Now you're in classes and you've been in it a while. What is that second transition like for you? Now that you're surrounded by students who didn't serve. What is that like to deal with professors that maybe didn't serve as well as students that didn't serve?
Well, I will say, coming to NC State, the transition was, as far as community standpoint, it was just fantastic because now that there is the Military Veteran Services Office in Witherspoon, if that wasn't there, I probably would have felt isolated at such a big school as well. Because I could walk into that office, Nick and Daniel are in there, other veterans are in there. I can walk around. It's like being at home, kind of. You walk in, and it's like your platoon of people, kind of. And I study there. I hang out there. I do work study there. I've gotten to know other veterans, even if it's not SVH effort, but it's somewhere veterans can hang out. That made the transition so much better, and to make those connections.
Yeah, so piggybacking off what he said, so one thing I think veterans in the classroom are, a lot more focused. I can tell you right now, I've been in a few classrooms where I look over and I see someone streaming Netflix. As much as I would love to, catch up on the Game of Thrones, I have been too busy. You realize how focused you are and you realize what's at stake, where someone coming fresh out of high school doesn't necessarily, it's not for everyone, but sometimes they just don't know what they're doing, where in the military you have more than enough time to think exactly what you want to do. And then regarding like the isolation thing, the resource center definitely helped me out because it's like the tribe thing. You're in the military, it's like a tribe. And then the Veteran Center is also kind of like your own little tribe where you hang out. And it's always nice to have people, continuously pushing you instead of being isolated and having no one to push you. Because in the military, you're always being pushed to better yourself, always being pushed. So when you just drop that, you kind of want to get lazy. And it definitely happened to me my very first year out when I didn't have the SBA. I got a little bit lazy because you're so used to such a structured time. 0 8, you got to get up in PT, then you're doing hip pocket classes all day, because those are fun. But then you get out and it's like, okay, so what am I doing today? Go to class and then what? So it's definitely nice, having like the SBA where it's structured and you have people that are always like watching you, like, hey, you working on class or what's going on, like continuously watching you, making sure that, you're staying focused. But overall, I would say veterans are more focused than civilians.
Tara, I'm going to let you answer the same thing, but I also wanted to hear from you, what is as being SVH president at Methodist, what is the SVA doing to also help with that transition issue with the student veterans?
Well, my experience is kind of different from when I got out and first went to community college and noticed that my assumption was that when you get out and you're still around the military bases, you thought that there was going to be kind of like an automatic camaraderie, and that was not the case in some posts. The SVA was not even mentioned for the first few duty stations I had to move to until I moved to North Carolina. I never even heard of a veteran lounge. I've never heard of anything remotely similar. So I was very surprised and actually excited because another veteran literally walked me to the veteran lounge and, you know, walked me and had me meet another veteran and people from the SVA, and before I knew it, I was president. So it was a whirlwind. I don't know how that happened. I'm appreciative. It's a really big jump from not having anything to help you in the support of veteran focusedness in or awareness in school to having an actual group. But the group was very small at the time. The Veterans Lounge is kind of like located off to the side of the university. So we started campaigning around the campus to pull more veterans into the lounge, into SVA. It was easier to pick them out of a crowd, you know. Usually you can tell by the multicam backpack or the patches or any of the haircuts, you know, but after a while.
Maybe the tattoos.
Tattoos. But after a while of going to classes, we kind of, you know, migrate to one another automatically without even saying a word. And then after a while, we're just like, hey, you can come to the SVA and talk about it. And first we do like functions and fundraising. For example, last semester we did fundraising for a student who got hit and killed by a drunk driver, and his family was flown down to accept his degree posthumously, sorry. And we raised over $1,000 to get all of his family to come down and you know, participate in the graduation and everything like that. And it was warming to see veterans that who never met this particular student, you know, come together and, you know, split all ideas about what can we do. Oh, we can go to Chick-fil-A and have one of those drive-in nights and get like a percentage off, or have like bake sales and different kind of things to help, you know, bring everyone together and help. So with that, we're starting to already think about ideas during the break to also include different organizations on campus. And we've already started working with the Black Student Union, GLOW, and the Environmental Club. So hopefully next semester we can get more.
I'm going to change the subject real quick and I'll come back to y'all. Jared, I want to go to you now. How are you, either way, how is the national level tracking to make sure that all these students and other students are actually being successful getting through this transition and getting through the school and getting that education?
Sure. So at the national level, we're working in partnership with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs to study, honestly, the efficacy of the GI Bill. You know, is it working? Is it a good, return on investment for the American taxpayer? Sure. But then also student success. And so a lot of that research, we publish it all for free. If you just go to NVEST, it's an acronym, the National Veteran Education Success Tracker, NVEST space SVA. Type that to a Google search bar, it'll take you right to our landing page where you can look at all of this research. But you know, really, when you look at it, a couple things to note. The GI Bill can be used by dependents and family members as well as veterans. We did only study veterans, primarily due to cost. So this represented 3.5 years of research and a cost of about $1.5 million to do the research. I'm in an academic room, so we all understand that research isn't magical, but believe it or not, people outside of academia think research is just magic. It just appears from thin air. So this took about 3.5 years, $1.5 million to study. But in total, we were able to study the first 1.854 million individual veterans to utilize the GI Bill. And really what we found was rather shocking on the front end because, you know, very much my own student veteran experience in community college, a 4-year school and grad school, you know, I was consistently told that veterans were not doing well relative to our peers. And, you know, I accepted this, but as I would look around as we were identifying each other, we'd do student organization events or SVA's national conference, I would see my sisters and brothers in arms and go, something's amiss here. Like it seems like we're kind of kicking butt and taking names, but everyone tells me we're not doing well. And those two things seemed at odds. And so when we aggregated all the national data, what it told us was that veterans were actually not only succeeding in higher education, but we were thriving. And then if you compare that to our post-graduation results, we were doing really well in the civilian world. So I remember saying to our team when we first kind of finished the report, are we about to tell everyone in America that they're wrong about veterans? And they were like, well, I think there's a better way to say that, but that's really what it was, that the contemporary student veteran is not only succeeding in higher education, but thriving. We're more likely to be graduating from four-year and graduate schools at not-for-profit, public and private, regionally accredited universities, so great schools. Our majors in this order are business, science, technology, engineering, and math, and health-related fields. Our GPA is higher than the national average, and our overall graduation rates and success rates are higher. So really, what we're doing is continuing to update that information so that it can drive policy, because absent data, anecdote, and assumption rule the day. And not just at college and universities from a policy perspective, state legislatures and the federal government. So it's trying to take all that data and make sure that we can start from the right operating position to know that veterans actually have a high propensity towards success, not that they're liabilities, but that they're assets to their campuses, their communities, and our country.
Jared, what are some of the biggest, I guess, I don't know if complaints is the right word, or if just the concern, I think is the best word, that you're hearing that the student veterans are having, throughout the country, obviously, so your national level, but what do you hear most is the big issue that's causing issues with getting through their degree program that they're trying to go through?
Sure, so I'm going to cover what we assume is the thing and then what is actually the thing. So what we assume is that it's going to be remedial education, tutoring, mental behavioral health related resources, homelessness risk, substance abuse. That's what we assume that all veterans are facing. Now, I would never purport that those are not issues among the veteran community. They most assuredly are, but they're small issues relative to how many veterans exist. The actual issues that we hear from student veterans are access to childcare, course sequencing, a sense of community are really some of the driving factors towards what are issues, as well as navigating my VA benefits and any level of bureaucracy at the university. So understanding that I enter one door, but then I'm told I went through the wrong door. And I'm like, well, why did you label the door the wrong way, right? So it's actually the ability to kind of navigate those things wind up being among the biggest challenges that veterans report themselves.
How is family, how does that interfere with trying to complete an education and then be military, either active or if you have family trying to get through the education side? How does that affect y'all? You both have families here.
Yeah, so I was actually in Oregon. It was just me and my daughter, and I was working full-time, going to school full-time, and it was just me and her. And so I was, trying to take as many online classes as I could, and then taking night classes after work. And it was just a constant, when I had time at work, I would do my schoolwork, and then when she would go to bed, I'd do my schoolwork or go to class. And so it's just a constant. And now, since Kevin's gotten out and we've moved back here, it's been a lot easier for both of us, because it's not just one of us doing, everything. We're kind of coming together and we're working better at, okay, you have time to do this, I'll do this. And so it works good to have support, and especially, us having the same background and knowing like how much we put towards everything, so how important it is.
Tara, if you give the mic, having an active duty spouse as well in there, how does that play into trying to finish out your degree without transferring to another school again, basically?
I told him this time is the last time, and if you do PCS, I'm not going with him. Because I have three more semesters. Before I moved here, I had 9 classes, and then I had to start over with 6, I believe, semesters more. But after a while, my other panelist said that going from one regionally accreditation to another regional it's like nothing, as if you did nothing at all. I went from Kansas to Georgia, and it was like, we don't take Midwestern at all. And I wanted to cry, because they don't tell you that, oh, well, even though that you have this much time in post 9/11 GI Bill, and even if you have to move, oh well, it's gone. So when it comes to trying to juggle that, like, I told my husband before, you have to do what you have to do. I understand your commitment, and I definitely understand your service, but I have to graduate. I have to get a job. This is not something I want to do for the rest of my life, is be a veteran student. I want to be a student veteran. But I just get creative, try bartering with friends. Whenever we have midterms or finals, we'll go to the veteran lounge, and whoever isn't having a final or midterm will watch the kids, and then switch or carefully select the daycare or fly in a family member if we could. But we're trying to be as creative as humanly possible, because the Army, the military, didn't issue a family, so you just have to do what you have to do.
I'll let you pass the mic down to Will. I'm going to start on your end and work our way back down. What, we're running, getting a little on time here. What would you say is the one thing that you want, especially the audience to know, any of the educators to know, that you need as a student veteran, and make sure that they're not, your time's not getting wasted? You have the GI Bill, you have constraints that you have to make sure you're fitting into. It's not like mom and dad are flipping the bill for years until you have 6 degrees. You have to do what you need to do. What do you think they need to know?
Well, obviously it's a common theme of accreditation issue, but that's not on this level, it's higher level, so maybe pressure, continuation of pressure on that aspect. But I would say, as far as a smaller platform, like in the classroom, there are a lot of instances that professors will talk to the classroom like they're all fresh out of high school, so that's not very inclusive. And they'll assume things like, just professors assume things, especially of 18, 19-year-old kids. This is why you're not getting this done, or this is why class is struggling. You're like, hey, I'm doing good. Like, it can be frustrating in classes. So I would say for people in higher ed, that just recognize, don't generalize your audience. There are veterans there. Just being inclusive, just in general, with those things.
And how much do you like being the team leader every time?
Yeah, that definitely happens. I would say it's great. That is, I will say, for professors in their room, for team leaders, it is great to have a veteran in the classroom to be a team leader. Now, granted, over time, over 8 semesters, that veteran's going to get picked every time. So if you have, and I've had really good professors in the college resources here, so over time, we'll be like, hey, maybe, as a professor, maybe we'll let him mentor, a team leader. Not be the team leader, but help him kind of grow some other, the younger students. And that's a tool that can be used to kind of draw from their experience and let them teach others.
Yeah, so pretty much the same stuff that Will said. Especially at a community college level, it's like the second edition of high school all over again. It's a good time. But most teachers are really good about it, treat everyone like adults. But there's some instances, I've had one instance I can't talk right now. I had one issue with a teacher, but where it's one of those things where maybe it was appropriate for a high school student, but as an adult, I'll just tell the story, make it really brief. So it was a college transfer class out of all the classes, the most important one by far. So I had to miss a day actually for an SBA event. And as soon as I got into the classroom, I notified her, why I missed school. But then it's like I was getting interrogated. She's like, "Well, did you really go to that, or why'd you miss?" It's like I don't think that's necessary. We're adults here. I can just tell you I missed school. It's not a big issue. It's not high school. But yeah, as far as like the leadership roles, I get picked for like the group speaker all the time. It's a blessing, and also it gets a little tiring. I'm tired of being the group speaker. And then definitely for like group projects, for our engineering project, I was the engineering lead. A lot more stress, but at the same time, there's benefits. We won the engineering competition, so it was awesome. But yeah, that's about it.
I agree with talking to the professors about why you need to miss school. Myself, I go through VA treatments, and a lot of the times it takes VA months for an appointment, and I have to balance or decide, should I risk missing this class or wait months again for another VA appointment? So I take that, opportunity to go to the VA appointment because I don't know when I'm gonna see it again, and I don't wanna have to discuss that, publicly, because I know some professors before are like, why did you miss class? And can you explain to us? And that's very inappropriate because it's a doctor's appointment. I told you, I emailed you, you shouldn't have to put anybody on the spot, especially near bases, which I don't really understand how some professors don't really understand that. But here in Methodist especially, I've never come across that. Most of the professors are ex-military or prior service. Sometimes I'll see them there at VA. So, it's like, hey, I'll see you later, but, but it's, I haven't had that kind of experience in North Carolina. Everyone's like, you're good? Okay, and for the most part, they know, everyone's accustomed to, you're adults, you know what you have to do. You're, kids, you have to get it together. But it's things like that they're gonna need to, be more mindful of when the next wave is coming. Also with my school in particular, all the holidays are staggered from Cumberland County schools. So we're all bringing our kids to school because, either daycare is packed or they close it down because they think it was going to snow and it didn't snow, and we have to bring our kids, and it's, we gotta figure out something when it comes to, because the veteran zones can only hold so many kids. So that's my thing.
Kevin, I know you're new to going back to school, but anything you've seen so far that you want to make sure that they know?
Oh, absolutely. Not to continue to beat a dead horse, but I would like to ask that you have flexibility and understanding. Richelle was obviously required to be here, but I came to support, we do have a family, we do have a life outside of the school environment, so with that, have understanding and flexibility. Also, do not be opposed to feedback from your students. I got email notifications stating, hey, you have courses coming up on these dates. So I reviewed the syllabus, emailed the instructor, said, hey brother, are you sure these are the dates? Because I need to plan out my calendar accordingly. There are other multiple things that I'm trying to balance. And he said, email back, said, yes, I'm 100% sure. Now just to give you an example of what that was, the schedule said the first day of class was to be on the recent holiday. So are you sure? We're going to show up on a federal holiday for one class when no one else on the entire campus is going. He said, yes, okay. Register sent out an email shortly after saying, no classes on the federal holiday. But those are the things, I'm very aware that you all have probably been in this profession a lot longer than I've been in school, which is only a couple of weeks, so there's that. But again, don't generalize your audience, don't make assumptions, because those of us that are in this position, we're double checking everything because we have our labs to plan accordingly, just as you all do as well.
I'm gonna kind of drop the bomb, I guess. I'm gonna say mental health is probably the biggest thing I think is misunderstood within school faculty. This generation of student veterans, a lot of them have been to Iraq and Afghanistan, and they come back with a lot of stuff that they're dealing with, and so, I have PTSD personally, and so, having taken online classes and night classes, I was very comfortable with having limited people, and then moving here, going to UNC-TV, being completely, introduced to a whole huge campus and, classrooms full of people. And so, there's been times where I've had to step out because it's just too much for me, or, something has been triggered and I can't, so I have to leave. And, I've had some of my professors say, I'm really disappointed in you, and it's just, I'm not gonna give you my life story and say, I have to go. So it's just something that I think is very misunderstood within the faculty, is that they don't consider, I have a veteran here who has seen, horrible things, are dealing with things still, and, that impacts not only the way that they present themselves in class, but also their dedication to their schoolwork. Because if they're having these issues, you know, it's hard for them to focus. They, you know, if they're triggered, then they're going to be completely zoned out. You know, it's hard for them to sit in a classroom for an hour listening to you talk without, you know, their mind going somewhere else. So it's definitely an issue, I think, that should be addressed, and, you know, people really need to understand that, and I don't think that's present at all.
Carl?
Going off of what she said, please don't be like, do you have PTSD?
Yeah.
You know, like, how should are you gonna be okay? Don't do that. Please don't do that. And please stop asking if we killed somebody, if somebody died. I have faculty asking, and it's highly inappropriate. None of the students asked me, but it's been a faculty that's asking me. Please stop. Please stop. I don't, that's not a question that you should be asking anybody, but yes, thank you.
And I'll let Jared wrap us up here from a high level point. What
Sure.
do educators need to know?
Yeah, and so I mean, literally every point made up here is the points I would have made. So I'll dovetail and then end on something. As it pertains to mental and behavioral health, it's certainly an issue in the veteran community. But what I would encourage educators to understand is it's an issue for every student on your campus, regardless of military service or not, because it's an issue for America. You know, we very much talk about veteran suicide as if it's somehow unique to the veteran community. The current statistics are as many as 20 veterans a day do die by suicide. But I have a bigger question for you. How many Americans die by suicide every day? It's 126, and we don't talk about it, right? So the ability to actually have conversations that are open, I commend my sisters and brothers in arms that are willing to do so, because we are leaders. We have those leadership attributes from our military service, and your ability to stand on your own stories, each of you, is incredibly impactful. Encourage that, and encourage it for all students on our campus. Because as it pertains to mental and behavioral health, we need to have a more national conversation about it, and we have to be inclusive of everybody when we're doing so. And the last notion to think about from a faculty and staff perspective is we talk about this notion as academics of something we define as the civilian-military divide, or civ-mil divide. I'm sure everyone on the panel has heard of this. You know the funny thing about civilians, what they don't call themselves? Civilians, right? Like, words matter, right? And so we say the civilian-military divide, but this is the first time in American history where we've studied it that literally only 1 in 3 current college students, faculty, or staff members state that they know a veteran. It used to be 2/3 stated that they know a veteran, which means for 2/3 of college students, faculty, and staff members, no one in their family served, shoot, probably no one in their neighborhood has served. And so we, the student veterans in higher education, and the military-connected students, and our family members, we are the ambassadors of the all-volunteer force. We are the individuals that have that ability to show you that you don't have to say, I don't know a veteran, because you likely do. So creating those inclusive environments where we can open up and have conversations that, sure, impact the veteran and military community, but as leaders can tie it into how it impacts our entire campus community, our local communities, and our country is really very important. So looking for ways to create inclusive environments where we can bring our whole selves to campus and note how we're actually more all similar to one another versus dissimilar. It's always hard to misunderstand somebody you know, so let's just get to know each other.
Thank you all for being part of the panel here, and I believe they've got some MREs ready for us here afterwards. So.
And some crayons.
Yeah.
To snack on.
Thank you all.